was born in the mild spring season of 1970, the earthy result of the most common occurrence on our living planet, the fertilization of one seed by one minuscule grain of pollen. My parents came together with a common vision of finding utopia, and my early years were formed by the kind of communal living where long-haired idealists grew, harvested, and shared food. I spent my days running free while my parents grew vegetables to trade for home-dried jerky and fresh raw milk. While our community's parents toiled in gardens, or hunted, or crafted, we kids made costumes out of paper bags and marched single file in little parades. We were often the entertainment at large gatherings where grown-ups laughed together and smoked homegrown flowers and drank Mount Spokane moonshine. But as with any idealized utopian vision, our little community was not sustainable. Ultimately, the project crumbled, and so did my parents' marriage. So we left Mount Spokane. My mother married a couple years later, and I was blown into the small farm town of Deer Park, Washington. The first thing my mom did at our new home was fill 2,000 square feet for a new vegetable garden. Truckloads of rich, dark soil were shipped in. The air was filled with the putrid odor of manure. This is where I first learned the importance of good soil. Before you can have a dependable and productive garden, it must have a solid foundation. And while we built the foundation for our garden, my mother and stepfather instilled me with the tools that I needed to build the foundation for my life. Now, my stepfather could not have been more different from my father. Where my dad was a permissive and hairy imbiber, my stepdad was a militant and clean-cut teetotaler. Our garden became a place where my sense of discovery was soon replaced by a sense of dread. I learned that farm kids are more often seen as a free labor force than as a source of entertainment. My new life was one of structure and discipline, a place where the battles with weeds were never ending and the sun shone down without mercy. Here, the seeds were planted for me to become an athlete. I learned that the more I endured the burning muscle and the sweating brow, the sooner I would be finished with my chores and able to do the things that kids actually want to do. I channeled my frustration at this terribly unfair life into competition and drive. I learned that there was no way out of weeding, harvesting, and pruning other than to push through as fast and hard as I could. Now, there is a day that will forever be burned in my memory when, covered in dirt, sweat, and tears, I proclaimed my hatred of gardening and made an oath to my mother and to the world that I would never, ever have a garden. So help me God. This day started like any other. My parents left in the morning for work, and my sister and I started our day staring down a long list of chores to be completed by lunchtime. As usual, they included weeding several rows of the garden. Now, like normal siblings, my older sister and I did not make it a habit to get along. I don't remember what specific petty competition got us going that day. I do remember that what started with tossing weeds really quickly devolved into the hurling of dirt clods, and then into an all-out brawl with bared claws, bloodied limbs, and 2 tear-streaked, dirt-covered girls. At this very moment, my mother's car turned the corner, slowing, while she tried to understand what it was that was unfolding in her prize garden that afternoon. The neighbors had come out for the show, and my mother hissed at us to get inside now. We were promptly grounded, with days of weeding ahead of us to occupy the extra time we were about to have on our hands. On that day, I knew I would never be a gardener. But still, I had already learned something about grit, and I knew that sometimes, to get a good harvest, you have to be merciless to the weeds that are growing in your garden. Fast forward to the summer before my junior year in college. I was living in Ithaca, New York, in a dingy basement apartment with hardly a drop of sunlight, in a relationship that was wilting, far from my family tree, and I had just left a dismal collegiate volleyball program and the scholarship money that went with it. My life had become overgrown with weeds, and my foundation was undernourished. One night, I left our apartment and walked alone along a wooded path, guided by the moonlight, to a dam high above a reservoir. It was a beautiful night, warm, still, buzzing with cicadas and dancing with fireflies. I stood on a rock ledge, peering over the edge. You see, this was the first day I had bothered to get out of bed in weeks. I don't know how long I stood there that night. But when I finally stepped in the door in the wee hours before the sun came up, my boyfriend was relieved to see me. The next morning, my boyfriend tilled a corner of the yard, brought home some seed packets, and talked me into starting a vegetable garden. He promised to do the weeding if I would promise to just make the seeds grow and harvest the vegetables. So, I spent the summer at the altar of Mother Nature. I meditated with a daily practice. Kneel, bow, stand. Kneel, bow, stand. Bury hands in the dirt, wash the fruit, eat, kneel, bow, stand, repeat. That garden saved my life that summer. I sowed, I watered, I even weeded. And when August rolled around, I had pumpkins worthy of a county fair. Those pumpkins were as big as a child and orange as the sunrise, and the long vines grew so fast that they exploded with life. So, in my 20th year, I returned to the garden and to myself. I moved to Seattle that fall and soon established my own ornamental garden. This was my first garden that was just for looks. I learned how to orchestrate palettes of color, texture, and scent. I studied how to weave architectural plant forms with soft, billowing accents for a balanced presentation. I still spend my days meditating on the breath of the garden. It was exhilarating. I often joke with my gardener friends that it's time to rearrange the furniture, waiting for the fall to move the plants around until the visual and practical relationships are harmonious. Ultimately, I was inspired to return to design school. And now, with many seasons of interior and architectural design experience, I am branching out once again and tilling my professional soil and planting the seeds to start my own freelance design business. I've learned that my life is my garden. Maintenance and perseverance are the keys in the long run. I decide what grows in it. I decide what it looks like. I harvest the fruit. When the weeds blow in, it's up to me to decide how long they stay. When branches die or become diseased, I must prune them without mercy. I must be flexible and observe my garden to see what's working and what's not working. I must be patient and capture the moment of the season to do the tasks that belong to that season. My most valuable tool is the knowledge gained from previous seasons. And above all, I must remember my foundation. I must maintain and nurture the soil that my garden grows in. So I leave you with a quote by Mahatma Gandhi. To forget to dig the earth and till the soil is to forget ourselves. Thank you.